What's up, TBS crew? It's your boy Steph, back with another reaction. This time we have Creepypasta Jr. People have been disappearing in my town. Creepypasta uploaded August 17th, 2019. Now down in the description will be links to Creepypasta Jr.'s channel, this original video, and to all of my social medias. Get at your boy and see the personal life that I don't upload to YouTube. Without further ado, let's get into it. Yeah, your best option would probably be to move if motherfuckers start disappearing.
The first time it happened, I was only a child in elementary school.
That's even worse.
I was sitting in class one day, while our teacher scribbled on the blackboard behind her. I glanced over and saw that one of the desks was empty. I quickly realized who it belonged to. It belonged to a kid named Alex. He was an average kid, not very remarkable in any way, but was always kind to anyone who interacted with him. While I stared at the vacant desk, wondering if he had gotten sick that day, my teacher snapped a ruler on her desk and called my name. I broke out of my daze and stared at her while the rest of the class laughed. The day finished normally and I went home. The next day at school, while the class slowly started to trickle in, I found myself looking for Alex to walk through that door. I'm not sure why I was so invested in this kid's life, but nonetheless, I watched and waited. He never showed.
Why would he?
Once school had started, the teacher began to take roll call, and after a few minutes, she was finished. She never once mentioned Alex's name. When I realized this, I quickly wondered if he had suddenly transferred schools and I just hadn't been paying attention.
Your teacher knows something.
During recess, I asked one of my classmates who sat in the desk adjacent to Alex's if they knew what happened to him. When I asked them, they gave me a very confused look and replied with only 2 words. "Who's Alex?" I thought I was going crazy. I could picture Alex's face clearly in my mind. There was no way someone could just vanish like that. After school that day, I stopped the teacher and asked her where Alex went to, and she didn't know who I was talking about. I then gestured to the empty desk in the classroom. She just shook her head and said that desk had been vacant all year. The look of utter confusion across my face sent off red flags to my teacher.
They know
She tried her
something.
best to comfort me.
They know
She said
something.
that maybe it was a kid in a different class, and she asked me if I knew his last name. Unfortunately, for the life of me, I couldn't remember his last name, so I simply shook my head.
They know
She
something.
consoled me and told me that I might have just gotten confused, even though I was sure I wasn't. There wasn't much else I could do, so I just nodded politely and left. The second time it happened was when I was in high school. Everybody knew about Jimmy Williams.
Who?
He was the pinnacle of high school royalty. He was the captain of the baseball team, was dating the most popular girl in school, and surprisingly, was quite smart. He had nearly perfect grades in every one of his classes. I used to jokingly wonder if he had sold his soul for greatness. I found out sometime after that his father was extremely strict and made sure he focused just as much on his grades as he did on his sports. Contrary to the stereotype, however, Jimmy was a very kind person. Whenever he'd see someone getting picked on or bullied, he'd challenge the bully to do it to him. They'd sheepishly back down and storm off, while Jimmy would just chat with the victim. Jimmy and I weren't particularly friends, but him and I had lockers right next to each other. He'd always give me a passing "hey" when he'd see me, and I'd return the gesture. One day, I walked into school, making my way towards my locker, when I noticed someone rifling through Jimmy's locker. I walked up to this person and asked him what he was doing. The guy just glared at me and told me none of my business. I asked him why he was going through Jimmy's locker, and he just looked at me once again before asking, "Who's Jimmy?" When I heard him say that, I felt a wave of familiar confusion pass through me.
I bet.
I replied, "Jimmy Williams, captain of the baseball team?" The guy just shut the locker and replied with,
Who?
"Never heard of him," before walking off. Luckily, I had a friend who was on the baseball team. After school, I went over to the Diamond and asked him if he knew where Jimmy was. My friend just gave me a blank look and said he didn't know any Jimmy. I was starting to feel like I had lost my mind. Just then, Sarah Clark, Jimmy's girlfriend, was walking by. I stopped her, asking her if she had seen Jimmy anywhere. She appeared confused and shocked by my sudden interaction and quickly walked away. After that, I ran to the school's office and asked the receptionist what classes Jimmy had. She asked me why I wanted to know, and I told her that he and I had a project together. After typing away on her keyboard for a few minutes, she said there were no records of a Jimmy Williams attending this school. Before she could ask my name, I briskly thanked her and left the office. After I got home, I spent the better part of the evening searching for any sign of Jimmy on the internet, but there wasn't any. It was as if he had been completely erased from existence.
Damn near.
But what was odder than Jimmy simply disappearing was why I was the only one that knew about it. Everyone else had no clue who he was or why I was even asking about him. The years continued, and despite my mental instability, I tried my best not to think about the strange occurrences. I had graduated and had gotten a job as a cashier at my local grocery store. I was relaxing on my day off when I had received a very irate phone call from my boss asking why I wasn't at work. Confused, I told him that it was my day off, that today was Mark's shift at work. He simply brushed off my excuse and told me to come into work immediately. I quickly got ready and drove to work. When I got there, my boss laid into me for being lazy and trying to come up with a lame-ass excuse. In a fit of rage, I stomped over to the clipboard in the break room which had our schedule on it and pointed angrily to today's date. My boss just glared at me for a moment. I could feel uncertainty well within me as I realized what was happening. I nervously turned to the schedule on the wall and saw my name on today's date. Not only that, Mark wasn't on the list. Neither was Katie or Ed.
Damn.
All three of them, whom I've worked with for months, weren't on the schedule anymore. I could feel my pulse quicken and beads of sweat begin to form on my forehead. My boss, upon seeing this, changed his tone to a more sympathetic one and sent me home for the day. Not long after that day, I started going to therapy. My therapist, albeit kind, didn't seem to grasp what I was telling her. She thought I was fabricating all of these people in my past. She mentioned the term imaginary friends on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
When we weren't talking specifically about that problem, however, she was quite understanding and had been helping me get through the more stressful parts of my life. It's been close to 4 years since the last time I had an incident. I was utterly convinced that therapy had helped me banish all those negative fabrications from my mind. My work life had improved. I had gotten a new job as an accountant for a company. I had become much more social. I had even gotten myself a girlfriend, Cassie. Everything in my life seemed to be progressing normally. Then, a month ago, as I stepped outside to head to work, I froze dead in my tracks. I could barely believe my eyes. Half of the houses on the other side of the street were completely gone. Once a neatly aligned row of houses was now littered with vacant lots. I was rooted in place on my porch staring out at the neighborhood, when suddenly a hand rested upon my shoulder and asked me if I was all right. It was Cassie. I swallowed my nerves and nodded. I asked her if those lots across the street had always been there, to which she nodded somberly. She had been aware of my condition ever since we started dating, and while she was very understanding, she was unsure of what to do. She asked me if I'd like to stay home, but I declined. I went to work, and when I started my shift, I noticed that quite a number of cubicles were empty. I didn't say anything. I quietly finished my work and drove home. That brings me to yesterday. When I woke up, I rested my hand on the other side of my bed. It was empty. A fear that I had long since repressed overwhelmed me. I stood up from my bed and called out to Cassie. I ran from room to room calling her name. With each shout, I felt more and more hopeless. When suddenly, I heard a voice asking me what was wrong from behind me. I turned and saw Cassie standing there confused. I ran to her and gave her a long embrace. I had never been happier to see someone in my entire life. Immediately, I packed a few bags and told her not to leave my sight. Within a half hour, we had loaded the car and drove out of that town. I don't know if I simply lost my mind, or if the people I remember truly just vanished into thin air. But as we drove out of the town, I couldn't help but stare fearfully at all the vast empty land that now took up the entire northern half of the town. If any of you live in a small town, and you start to notice people disappearing left and right, run. Get in your car and run as far away from that town as possible, before you end up losing someone close to you.
Fuck that. Either someone close to you or you end up disappearing. This story was funny. I ain't gonna lie. Oh man. Hell no. I thought Mike I thought Mike was supposed to work today. Who? The fuck are you talking about? Are you on drugs? I'm telling y'all, man. This is funny. This is funny as hell. Hell no. You ever been in a situation like that? Like you go to a job, right? And like, let's say you're going for an interview. And you, let's say, can I speak to Mr. So-and-so? And the motherfucker, like, one of the employees is like, who? Or you, like, you're in school and you have a substitute teacher or substitute professor. And they be like, hello, class, my name is Mr. Or hello, my name is Mrs. So-and-so. And you be like, who? Oh man, I ain't gonna hold y'all, man. This was funny. I needed this. Like I was a little sleepy, cause I've been recording a few videos now, and it's what 12:23 at night. So yeah, man. But this woke me up a little bit. This shit is funny. Like you mispronounce someone's name. Like, hey, do you know this person? And you say their name wrong, and they be like, who? or they really get into it. You mispronounce a name or something, and they be like, who? I ain't gonna hold y'all, man. Me and my coworker, but especially my coworker, man, he be cracking me up when it comes to shit like that. Like, someone say something to you and you just be like, who? It's probably really stupid to a lot of y'all, but to me, it's funny. It cracks me up, man. It's always a good, funny time, man. It's always good, man. I like the story, though, man. This was a laugh. I needed this laugh. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed it, too. Thank you so much, guys, for watching my video. If you enjoyed the reaction, leave a like, a comment, and share the video. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and tap that bell icon so you will get notified every time your boy Steph drop new content, which I do 7 times a week, at least for now. That is all I got for y'all this time around. Your boy Steph is out. Peace.